Welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter and I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts in the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Kislak Center and the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development institute in the Kislak Center focusing on manuscript studies, sort of broadly defined. We do a lot of digitization. Actually, the main focus of my work is the digitization of manuscripts. But one of the reasons we're able to digitize manuscripts is because we have collections. So once a week, I like to go to the shelf and pull down one of our manuscripts and just do a little bit of a show and tell. So today's manuscript is LJS 215. LJS means that it is in the Schoenberg collection. So this was a collection that was on deposit and is being gifted to us from Lawrence J. Schoenberg. That's why it's LJS, because it's Lawrence J. Schoenberg. And this one is, I checked the record. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the provenance for this manuscript in a minute, but this is currently on deposit. It's not actually part of our collections officially yet, but I think it will be eventually. I'm looking at Amy. I think that's the plan. It's just not quite there yet. So what is it? This is a little, you can see, and I'm not using that word lightly, it is a small book here. I do not have large hands. It was written in France in 1511. It was signed by the scribe, the compiler, the scribe and the compiler. And it's a collection of scientific texts, mostly, well, I don't know, mostly. There's astronomy, astrology, geometry. There's a section about dyes. So all kind of a variety of stuff, but it's a really pretty little book. Before we take a look inside, let's take a look on the outside. The binding is later. So I said 1511, so early 16th century is when this was written. The binding, however, is 18th century Morocco binding with this lovely gilt spine. You can see the title on the title that somebody gave it, Astronomy, on the spine there. And there is, if you look at the top, we'll come across this eventually, but there's this ribbon marker here. So that's part of the binding. It's got gilt on the edges. It's a pretty little book. Pretty little book. It's a little bit, the binding is a little bit tight, but we will make it through. So it starts out, well, it starts out with some very nice marbled paper, I think, on the cover. And then we come in. It is written on paper there. So it starts out, and throughout you're going to see a lot of charts and a lot of tables. So here are some, the record calls these astronomical and astrological charts. And to be honest, I have no idea what is going on here. So, and it doesn't say anything in the record, but they are kind of cool to look at. I think this would be a really neat book if you were interested in these kinds of topics, a neat book to do some research on, because although the record identifies what the type of texts there are, there's no information about what exactly the texts are. It is incredibly unlikely that the compiler, whose name I should give you, Imbert Fautrier, his French. It is highly unlikely that he wrote this, I think. I think it's more likely that he took existing texts and copied them. So this has all been copied from other places and haven't been identified specifically. So it might be a neat project to come in and see if you can identify what they are. So we reach the end of these tables, or the diagrams, and then we come to tables, and there are a lot of these. Let me zoom in a little bit so we can see. There we go. So it's table after table, and I think that, well, so here's a table sort of off by itself, and then we have some treatise writing and more tables. I think I was looking at this earlier, and I think these might be geographical places because I thought I saw Argentina down here. So this has something to do with, and the tables are labeled at the top. So tables having to do probably with, you know, planets and stars, something aligning around geographical areas, which was a concern of people who were doing early. Oh, I see. Let's see. There is Amy says maybe horoscope related. Isaac Land, Michael McDonald's book Mystical Bedlam was based on manuscripts that included some astrological charts like these. He taught himself how to read the charts from 17th century how-to manuals. Yeah, I think so. There's actually a student at Lehigh University, which is north of Philadelphia. Lehigh took part in a project that we worked on here to digitize medieval manuscripts, and they have an astronomical astrological manuscript. And they have a student up there who also taught himself how to read these charts. So he's done some interesting work with their manuscript specifically. So here's more tables and charts. I actually want to get past that a little bit. So this is sort of interesting. So we have these blank leaves that are ruled, and this, so 1511 I think was around the time or late enough that you could buy blank books and blank things, and I think that that's what this is, that this was a book. So he sort of got lined paper the same way you would get, or similar to the way that you would get lined paper. And so he was writing on this existing, which is why we're going to find a lot of these blank leaves sort of between texts. This has not been written on, but there's an imprint of text, which I'm thinking that there was a leaf that was removed at some point. And actually, as I was going through it earlier, I was seeing other places where I'm seeing imprint of ink and leaves that are missing. And that's sort of interesting. So I think there was a leaf here at one point. So more charts, tables. So here we're getting to an astrology section, because we have Aries, and we're going to be seeing Gemini, Taurus. So this is more charts having to do with the astrological signs here. But again, unfortunately, I am not the person to tell you what exactly is happening here, but it's definitely astrology. So then we have some other sort of tables happening here, and the having astrology and astronomy close to each other is something that you see a lot in the Middle Ages and into the Renaissance. They were looking at the stars and thinking about the stars, and they didn't have the sort of hard separation that we have today, between one of them being science and the other one, not. Okay, so now we're sort of past the first bunch of charts, and we come here, we're on 51 verso. The only way that I know we're on 51 verso is because I counted the leaves. Because this is sort of inside baseball, but because this book is on deposit, Amy hasn't gone through and put pencil numbers on it. So when we get new manuscripts, when they're ours, we put numbers on them in pencil, and it makes it a lot easier to figure out where you are in the book. But this is on deposit, so we haven't done that yet. All right, I'm having questions about the lettering. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's see if we can get this in focus. Hello, will you focus? There we are. So the script is lettre bastard, which is I don't know if you want to say more about the script, Amy. You're more of a paleographer than I am. And Joyce is pointing out that it's in French. Yes, there's a lot of French in this manuscript. And you'll also note that there's an empty space here for a letter that's been left out. But as we start getting into it, you're going to see that there are these really nice ribbon initials because they look like they could be sort of made out of ribbon, and they get quite colorful. So we're going to see a lot of these. In fact, once you get through the charts, one of the real delights about going through this book is the little bits of decoration that show up. It is not a fancy manuscript by any extent, but it does have some neat decoration here. We'll see some faces. Let me zoom out again. And some other things. And when we get to the it's not geology, not geography, geometry. When we get to the geometrical sections, there will be other pretty things to look at. So maybe let's make sure we get there. Let's see. And every time there's a new text, you're going to be seeing, blank space. We'll see initials. There's some rubrication to separate them. But again, because nobody, I think, has looked really closely at what exactly these texts are, that is work that I would love to have to know more about what is. Oh, so here I mentioned the face. So here's the kind of face that you sometimes see sort of added in as additional decoration into the ribbon initials. Oh, here's a very nice one. There's a nice one here. So it seems like there are sections where I've forgotten his name already, the scribe and compiler added. So here's another little face. Maybe he was getting bored. He was in a mood. Leslie says the decorated versals are the camel style. I hadn't heard that. Camel style. All right. So Amy, I asked her for more information about the script. She says the script is a calligraphic form of French cursive, more like semicursive, loops and tails, but not connected letters. So it does look a little calligraphic, but it is. Oh, cadal style. That makes more sense. Leslie says not camel style, cadal style. It's like, I've heard of that. I haven't heard of camel style. All right. Here's another new section. And now we have green and red. Let's see. Here we are. And I think that we're still in a section, as far as I know, that's sort of talking about astronomy and astrology, but I don't know what these are, but we're going to start seeing more and more of these little diagrams. Looks like math. I am not an expert. I really want, ooh, that's looks like a bird or something down here. Sure. Oh, here's Shreve in Madrid. Would the scribe who wrote the text have done the letters and added the faces? I'm kind of looking at Amy. I've sort of been assuming that it was all the same person because it seems like a sort of personal little book. But I don't know. See, there's also these, and these might be later. I think this is later, but these sort of decorative aspects added. Oh, and here's another one. This is quite a pretty little flower up here with very nice leaves. And I'm just going to point out that it does imprint on the other side. There's a whole lot of sort of imprinting. And here's where the ribbon comes in to mark out this this next section. There's some sort of decoration. Ooh, sorry, it wants to focus on my finger, which isn't very helpful. Amy says the faces might be later doodles, which makes sense. So it could be somebody reading it later, coming through and adding them. So here's red and green and red. Let's see. Now we get to the geometry, and this is a bit that's, I think, is pretty neat, because here we start seeing some really neat, not only so we're going to see diagrams like this, and they're going to be similar to diagrams that you might remember. I mean, they look similar to diagrams that, you know, I was drawing when I was in school and studying geometry. We have cubes and squares and angles. And here we have some round edges, right? Cylinders, three-dimensional triangles, more colors. We're going to start seeing blue and red. They've sort of changed ink, I guess, and other interesting ones here. Let's see, there's a question from Isaac. When did these large initials and fanciful illuminations in the margins fall out of fashion? Does that occur well after 1600, or was it already an old-fashioned style? I don't know. I mean, I think it's sort of like, it depends on geography. And I mean, there were certainly earlier manuscripts that didn't have any decoration at all. So it also depended on the type of manuscript. And then when books started to be printed, maybe it was printing that simplified, but I don't know. My knowledge of sort of post-medieval Renaissance book history is not great. So I don't even know what was happening with books in later centuries. I don't know if Amy has a better, no. Sorry, Isaac. I don't know. And I don't know exactly when the sort of ribbon initials were most popular, although if I was looking at them, I would say, well, that looks 16th century, which this book, you know, certainly is. So, oh, here's another face. We have another face. We have some more angles happening. Oh, and here, this is where things start getting fun. So here's a tower where we're trying to figure out how tall the tower is. Claire is asking to see the headbands. I'll show you the headbands in a minute. Let me get through this because we're getting so this is more like practical math. We actually have a whole manuscript, an Italian earlier one, that's sort of full of practical geometry like this, that has lots of you know, things about figuring out the height of towers and the length of textiles and all kinds of stuff. So this is sort of relevant. Oh, and here we have circles. So now we're getting into circles. We have a barrel. So this would be another practical matter, wanting to know how big the barrel is. We have wheels. We have bricks. So this is a very neat little, I think that might be my favorite section in the book. There. All right. So I'm going to we're going to take a look at the headbands for Claire. So here, oops, sorry. I hope we can get this in. Hello. It doesn't want to be. So here's on the, I'm sorry. I don't know why this doesn't, there we go. Hello. There's one. Maybe it will like it better if I go to the top, but you can't really see the top because it's under here. You can sort of see it there. Sorry, Claire, this isn't the best view, but they are there, just there. Okay. The headbands go around the top and the bottom of the spine and sort of help to hold Okay. So the next section is, what is the next section? Oh, this isn't the section marker. I put this here because this was another place where I noticed that there was an imprint of a blue and red ribbon initial on this side. I hope you can see that. It's especially clear here on the edge. That's not showing through the paper because there's no initial on the other side. So there was a page here that has been removed. I make structural models of all of our manuscripts, and I'd done a model of this one, and it doesn't show that there's a page missing. So I'm going to have to go back and I think double check this one because there's definitely a page missing here. Okay, let's keep going. I think we're no longer in oh no, I said we're no longer in geometry, and there's some geometry. So we're still in this geometry section. So that goes on for quite a while. And now our next section is instructions for making dyes and pigments. So we have moved from that along to this. Oh yes, Amy is pointing out, and I haven't mentioned this, but I'll come back here to show you the if you look along the edges of a lot of these pages, you can see these little holes, and those are the prick marks that were used to create the ruling for this. So forget what I said. I was talking earlier about buying lined paper, but clearly somebody pricked these and did them by hand. Yeah, Joyce is pointing out that the initials at the end of this geometry section are a lot simpler. They are, but there was also a page, here's one, where we have both the simple one and the sort of fancy one. And so I don't know, it's a little hard to say why, because yeah, they were all very fancy, and then all of a sudden we're getting these simple ones. It could be, I don't know. I don't know why he's done that. Or maybe there is another person who's coming through. Here's another page where we have both a fancy ribbon initial and a smaller initial. So this section is instructions for making dyes and pigments. And so there won't be, I don't think there's any diagrams here. This is all sort of descriptions of that. And this looks to be a lot simpler. It has just plain red initials. Now something I would be interested to know is how long he was actually writing this book. We date it to 1511 because I think he signed it and put the date there, but whether that was the date that he finished or I don't know. Shreve is saying, strikes me as multiple hands involved in the initials. Yeah. I mean, it could be. So we saw that there was a blank initial space at the start. I wonder if he didn't do the initials at all and some other people came in and finished that for him. Thinking about the scribal practice is really interesting. Because it's sort of, you have to look at it and sort of try to figure it out. Brand says it's hard to tell from this quick stroll through, but I wonder if it's a hierarchy thing. Cadal initials might indicate the start of a major division. They might, but there were also places where we had a few, several on a page. So, but that would be something that you need to look at the text to kind of figure out. Joyce says it's amusing that some of the upper words have flourished letters. Yeah, some of them have these that go quite far up into them, and then some of them don't. So, and it might be interesting to see. I don't know. Again, who knows why scribes do what they do? I don't know, but I like looking at their work. All right, so let's see. We're almost to the end, so I want to make sure I get everything. So here are some more tables. And again, I don't know, blank pages. And, oh, here is another place where we might be seeing a missing leaf, because we have these imprints of initials here. Amy says, you can see that leaves were bigger before this binding. Yeah, some of them, it's funny because we can see the prick marks on some of these pages, which implies that they weren't trimmed on the sides, but they were clearly trimmed on the top and the bottom. So I haven't mentioned it, but there are early page numbers down at the bottom. And a lot of these have been trimmed off. So I think originally they might have been more sort of narrow and tall, and it was sort of trimmed top and bottom. All right. So one more section, I think. We have some notes on medical preparation. So here's medical preparation, and then there's a couple of tables, and then there's more medical preparation, and then more tables. So he's sort of filling things in as he goes. Somebody called them ghost letters. I think that's a great way to explain those. So more tables. We have later people coming in and using the blank. There was a blank page here, and somebody used it for making notes. That actually might be an owner's. There are some owner's mark. I said I was going to mention, let's see, the provenance. We actually have so provenance is the sort of record of who owned manuscripts. And this one was formerly owned by Christian Friedrich. Signatures dated 1633 and 1635. Christian Friedrich here, and 1653, I think, 1633. So here we have this is a former owner who owned it for quite a while. Well, 2 years. I misread that. 33 and 35. So that is what's going on there. And then one more table. And then before we finish, here's his other, I think this is 1633. Here's our other initial. And this is the table of contents. So somebody quite a bit later read through and wrote out a list of the contents of the book, but they didn't put any kind of page numbers or anything. So this might be helpful if you were going to go through and figure out what all the texts are. You might, let's see. Oh, Shreves suggests Christian's flourishes look similar to at the top of previous pages. So he might have gone in and added it. Yeah, early people who owned these books a few hundred years ago, they were not shy about writing in the books. You're not supposed to write in books now, but they weren't shy about it, which is nice. Here's another owner's mark, 1760. So we have a few hundred years of owners of information, although it does skip from, we have the 1760 date, and then it was for sale in 1988. So there's a couple hundred years where it's unclear where it was, which is really, it's something that often happens. All right. It's 12:30 and we made it all the way to the end of the book. So that's great. Thank you so much for joining me for this quick run through this little book. I really hope you'll come next week. Free library is great. Widener 7 is great. And otherwise, I will see you all again later. Have a great week, everybody.